Volume.com is a free platform with live stream performances, concert broadcasts, and a video archive that includes performances by 311, Brothers Osborne, Waylon Jennings, Phil Lesh, Sheryl Crow, and more. And we know that none of that is actually how he plays it. And it's a testament to how difficult slide is. That was terrible. Come on. All right, we're back. It's Shred With Shifty time. Listen, before we get into today's show, I want to tell you, because you're going to be excited about this, there is a new Chris Shiflett signature model out now. This is the charcoal frost version of it. It's a Fender Telecaster Deluxe. We call it the Cleaver. We lovingly call it the Cleaver. It's based on my super duper master built custom shop guitar that we put out a few years ago, but this is the more affordable American-made version. It also comes in a beautiful red. This is the gray charcoal frost one. I highly encourage you to go get it right now from your local guitar shop. Doesn't that sound nice? Anyway, the Cleaver, out now. All right, let's get to today's guest. You know, I've been in this podcast game for a long time, and sometimes you go into these interviews and you're a little nervous because you don't really know the person you're talking to, and you're like, oh, what are they going to be cool, or are they going to be all serious? What's it going to be? And I got to tell you, Derek Trucks was so laid back and easygoing. He just put me at ease right away, and we had a fantastic talk. I could have just talked to this guy all day about guitars and music, and he's like the best slide guitar player on earth right now. So let's get right to it. This is Derek Trucks on Shred With Shifty. Are you sequestered in a backstage right now?
In Kalamazoo, man.
Oh, for real?
Oh, yeah.
And you're playing a Gibson. It's like, you know, it's poetic.
Right up the road.
Yeah. What are you playing today? Is that the one? Which one is the one? Because I feel like I've seen you play a couple different SGs over the years.
I've played this one for maybe 15, 20 years. So this is like it's a reissue of that Dwayne Allman, Dickie Betts guitar they put out years ago. And Dwayne's daughter Galadriel gave me this, and it's just a super light SG. Like, they're all light, but this one's especially light. But yeah, that's kind of the only one I really use, unless I break the string.
I'm always curious when I see somebody that's so known, so associated with one specific kind of guitar. Like, what is it about the SG that you connected with all those years ago that it's been such a mainstay for you?
I think it was probably starting really young. When I was, I think, 11 or 12, I got my first SG, and it was a Les Paul was too heavy because I was about 90 pounds.
Don't I know it?
For playing slide, I think just the access up top is really nice. And then you just, I think you get comfortable with something and it becomes a bit second nature. So anytime I would move to another guitar, I would just be annoyed by it, or you have to think too hard about it. So, you know, just I got stuck with it.
And how do you set it up for slide? Like with this guitar, this is kind of my go-to. I don't play a lot of slide. You're going to find out today. I'm a pretty novice slide player. That's why I'm so excited. You're the first guest we've had on this show that we're focusing on slide with. So I'm very excited to pick up some tips. But I keep my action like super high on this thing. How about, like, how do you set yours up?
I mean, I play everything on this guitar, so I think it's pretty low considering. I don't know if that's, you probably can't see it, but
I can see it pretty good.
Yeah, it's pretty low, but I play an open E all the time, so I think the tension from tuning up a whole step, half step, probably saves me from just clacking the frets at all the time. But yeah, I keep it about as low as I can and still play slide on it. But it's 11, 14, 17, 26, 36, 46, so heavy-ish, but not too heavy.
Well, that's okay. You mentioned clacking. How do you avoid the clack? Because even with my strings high, I feel like I'm just meat pawing it half the time and still clacking anyway.
I'm probably doing that too. Just I think electric guitar helps. When you play an acoustic, you really hear it. But
Yeah.
I don't know. Just I guess being less, maybe a little more touch, less aggressive on it all the time. But it depends on the tune, man. Sometimes you got to make noise.
Yeah. Sometimes you want the clack.
Sometimes you need it.
Yeah. Hey, now, do you remember years ago, it must have been like 10 or 15 years ago, we were on tour in Japan, and you were over there with Eric Clapton.
I was thinking about that this morning. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think I've actually seen you since then, but I have such a great memory of that trip, and me and Taylor were sitting there in line at the coffee shop in the lobby, and it was you and Doyle, and we're just like shooting the breeze or whatever, and I think one of us said like who are you on tour with over here? And one of you guys goes, Eric. And I think I said, Eric who? And like on cue, Eric Clapton turned around and was like, hello.
That's incredible. But yeah, I was thinking about that this morning, man. That had to be 2006 or 2007. Because I was out with him for maybe a year and a half, and you guys played the Budokan. I remember we came to see a show.
Yes.
Came to see a show there. So yeah, that's fun. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's been a while. It got me thinking. Like, I mean, you were, I think, pretty well established by then. But what was it like when you were starting out, kind of before you were really established as a player in the scene and everything, when you would go out and play with legends like that? Would they encourage you to get out front and do your thing, or would you kind of be in the background playing chords and and kind of being reserved? Like, I would imagine it would be different depending on the gig, but how was that for you?
I was really lucky to play with a lot of my heroes early. I started touring at 9 or 10 years old, and I remember doing shows with Buddy Guy then, and setting with Bob Dylan then, like 11 or 12, and I was always reserved naturally, so they would have to pull you out of your shell a little bit. Buddy Guy was always great about that. He would he'd let you know what he was like, get your ass out here. The thing I remember about him is we were playing a lot of small blues clubs. This is early 90s, so he hadn't really had the big resurgence yet. Still playing Skipper's Smokehouse in Tampa, Florida, and these little tiny clubs that are still rolling. But he would get the band, when he wanted to bring it down, he would just bring it down to a whisper, man. Like the band's cooking, but it still wasn't quiet enough, and you could hear the amps humming. I remember that discipline and that use of dynamics just being a huge kind of a huge thing that went off in my head. That it's powerful when you can bring things down to that level and still hold the intensity. Because then when you take the lid off of it, it's a big trip that you've taken. So I was always lucky. At least I'm sure there were a few people I met along the way that were less inviting, and but those are usually fun. And those are the mediocre musicians. The great ones are usually really confident in their shoes, and they're like, come on, like what you got, or they want to help you along, or a lot of the old blues guys, like they knew they were kind of the last of that guard, and they wanted to be carried on. So they're really open with it. The Allman Brothers were that way for me. A little more intimidating with Dickie Betts early on because he just had that persona, and he was that guy. But when I joined the band at 19, he was inviting too. But yeah, BB, Eric, all those guys, I feel really lucky that I got a chance to be around them and just soak it up.
With your family connection to the Allman Brothers, was that music that you grew up with and was part of your formative years of playing, or was that something that you came to a little down the road after you'd been playing?
No, it was in the house. I mean, they were in the '80s. They were on hiatus for most of the '80s, so it was kind of mythology. My dad was a roofer in Jacksonville. His older brother was in the Allman Brothers, so he was at the Fillmore East and the Atlanta Pop Festival, and he saw a lot of these legendary shows. And my dad, he wasn't. He always said he was an atheist, but the way he listened to music, it was like that. That was the thing. So when he would talk about these shows, talk about seeing Hendrix or Dwayne Allman and Dickie at the Fillmore like that, he would just light up. And that was the music that was spinning, those albums, the Fillmore East and the Layla record. That was named after the Derek and the Dominoes record. So that music was in heavy rotation in the house. And then Elmore James, when I first started playing, he had all these blues records too. So that's kind of what I cut my teeth to, was the 30 or 40 vinyl records that he had in the house.
I mean, you started so young. You just mentioned your dad, so I'm guessing that's going to be a big part of your answer to this next question. But art and sport, and probably other fields as well, are littered with child prodigies that flame out before they, get to adulthood. How do you feel like you navigated that, given the fact that you started playing, not just playing guitar, but playing out so young?
I think it was kind of a perfect storm of my parents were great about it. I never felt like I had to do it. It was always it always felt like there was an off ramp if I wanted it. No matter how big it got. I mean, it was a slow build for us. It never popped. I wasn't singing, so there wasn't a huge chance of it just becoming an overnight thing. So I think I was lucky that way. Just kind of met the right people at the right time. I was on the road, and my dad was out with me till I was 16 or 17, and he didn't fully shield me from everything that was going on. I mean, he kept it at arm's length, but he made sure I was aware of what was going on, because I'm playing with older, grizzled musicians, guys that have been doing it forever.
Right.
Well, now I realize they're guys that are now my age. When I was starting, that's who I was playing with. But I mean, this is the late '80s, early '90s. I mean, it was a scene. Blues bars, people were partying and doing everything. And
Sure.
he made sure I was aware of, not fully aware, but I wasn't I wasn't taken out back, and I could tell who was doing what, essentially, and you could tell which way that went, and
Right.
some people were able to kind of keep it between the lines a little bit and keep the eye on the prize, and other people were not. And some of that's, you're predisposed, but some of it is seeing it, and you learn life lessons by either doing it yourself or watching it go down and it affecting you. So I think that helped a lot, that I wasn't completely shielded from what was happening around me. And then I met a lot of great people along the way, like Colonel Bruce Hampton, and just different musicians that became, big mentors and kind of always steer you in the right direction at the right time.
Who was Colonel Bruce Hampton?
I don't know how to explain Colonel. He's just one of those guys, just larger than life. I feel like he, a lot of people compare him to like the Southern Frank Zappa, but I think he was a little, and I'm a massive Zappa fan, but Zappa was pretty cynical, and Colonel was kind of the opposite of that. But they're the same character, and a lot of like Joseph Campbell, like the archetypal, mythological, like religious stuff. There's the jester, where they seem like they're the crazy person, but they're the only sober person in the room that sees everything that happens. And Colonel was kind of that guy. He was always in the middle of mayhem, and everyone just assumed he was doing everything that everyone else was, but he just wasn't. He was just, the absurdity of all of it is what kind of got him off. And he had the most amazing taste in music, and his BS meter was just tuned perfectly, and he just and like so many great musicians would come through him, and he would kind of just break you down, or if you needed it, he would kind of take the ego out of you and take that out of your sails. He made sure people knew why they were doing it, or he would just ask the important question at the right time and turn you on to the right thing at the right time. But he was fascinating. I've never met anyone else like him before or since. So.
And you spent some time in his band?
A little bit. I toured with him in mid-teens, but just was always around him. I think I met him at 11 or 12 years old, and just he was there every step of the way, and turn you on to the right record at the right time, or the right book at the right time, or
right.
He's like, "Do you know? Are you ready yet?" What are you talking about? Then he hand you a Krishnamurti book, or a Love Supreme, or Sun Ra, or just turn me on to Son House, like the great Delta blues stuff. Or he was just always around, man, and just kind of knew everybody, and just a unique individual.
I know you have like a deep love of jazz, but a lot of your music, and I know you've covered done some jazz stuff over the course of your career, but a lot of what you do, it seems to my ear, more rooted in R&B, like classic R&B kind of vibe. So how does the jazz influence kind of come out when you're playing non-jazzy music?
I think a lot of it is probably. It's probably in the modal sense where, I spent a good 3-4 years of listening to no guitar players. It was all horn players or singers, or it was just like anti-guitar. Not anti-guitar, I just kind of didn't want to play the same things. So, so it was a lot of the Blue Note stuff, a lot of the Impulse stuff, but a lot of the great tenors, Wayne Shorter, John Gilmore, who played in Sun Ra's band, and of course all those great Coltrane quartets. A lot of the live stuff. Live at Birdland is one of my favorites, because there was just an intensity in the way that band played together too. It reminded me of the way I would hear my father talk about seeing the Allman Brothers when they were just locked in. Like these guys would have gone to war together, and they would have gladly gone out together. And you can hear that, and when you hear Elvin Jones and McCoy Tyner and those guys lock up. And then I remember they put out a box set of that quartet, and there was a quote in there from Elvin Jones, and he said, to play the way we did, you had to be willing to die with a motherfucker. And I was like, that's exactly what it sounds like. So I don't know. It's just that. I think it's that mentality of just kind of dangling your feet over the edge of the cliff when you're playing, and being willing to go outside of whatever mode or scale you're in, and kind of push it a little bit, knowing that the people around you will either come with you or stay put and let you sort it out. So it's I don't know. I just feel like the more listening you do, the broader your vocabulary becomes, and it works in different scenarios. It's all the same thing essentially.
Well, watching you play, like a lot of people playing slide just would kind of stick to, the certain boxes, certain areas. I'm at the 1 chord, I'm going to be here, the 4 chord, I'm going to be 5 chord. And it seems like you cover a lot of space on the neck. Like you don't seem stuck in those boxes at all.
Well, I think some of that came along from listening to a lot of Indian classical music, and Ali Akbar Khan specifically on the sarod. I remember when I heard him. It's a fretless instrument, so you're like, it's the same thing. These are things you can find on the slide, and they're playing with 4 strings. The main melody strings are 4, and so a lot of it's up and down the neck, and it's almost like the early blues stuff where these guys were learning on a diddly bow, like 1 string on the side of a cabin, and you're playing. It's like a jar on the wire from a broom handle or something. Like it's just, and so it's melody, and it's one thing, and it's up and down the neck, and so I think once I started making those connections, it just kind of frees you up. You realize that it's with 1 string you can get a lot done with 1 string. And then you piece those things together, and it becomes a whole different world.
If you're playing in open E all the time, like how are you fretting chords when you're not playing slide? And how are you sort of approaching it because I know I see a lot of time you're putting your slide in your pocket or whatever, and playing without it. Like how do you make like, yeah, I don't know what I'm even trying to ask, but like, how do you fret those chords?
So I remember the early years of playing. You just trying to find ways to mimic what you can do in standard tuning. And then one of my good friends, Jimmy Herring, a great guitar player, when I was in a band with him and my uncle, it was called Frog Wings. I think I was probably 15 or so. And me and Jimmy were rooming together, and Jimmy is just he's just ahead. He is always shedding, always thinking. Like he's a great teacher too. He taught for years. He was really interested in open E, and he was like, we should just get notepads and just write it out. And so we would take just different modes, different chords, and just find, all right, write out the neck. Where's this note everywhere on the neck? And you just visualize it. And then you're like, oh shit, there's that chord there. I had these notebooks that, from sitting with Jimmy for years, and it just kind of opens up a whole world. You realize you put these three notes together anywhere on the neck, it's a version of a E chord. It's just different versions. But when you see it, you realize, wow, there's a lot of them. and so that opened up that whole world for me. So you realize that it's all there. I mean, there's a lot of things that are really easy to do in standard tuning that you just got to get wide for. But kind of the beauty of it is you end up not falling into the same stuff that most people would, because what's easy for me is difficult in standard and vice versa. So you just end up playing a little differently. And I noticed that came in handy naturally when I did that tour with Clapton and Doyle, because it was 3 guitar players in the band. And I'm in open E at all times. Doyle's playing upside down left-handed, and then Eric's Eric. So we were kind of never in each other's way. Just it was three really different ways. And so when we would start playing a tune or learning a tune together, you never fell in the same place. So it kind of always spread out in a nice way, just naturally. So that was so that's fun.
You mentioned the confidence of those sort of elder statesmen of the blues that you were playing with. And I think of slide playing, like singing, is so much of it is, at least for me, is like a confidence game, and which I have very little confidence when I'm trying to play loud and with other people, and so I start getting sharp and I'm flat, and then I just I start panicking. So how would you, what would be, I don't know, some advice for people starting out, trying to get into slide to improve their intonation?
I think it's all ear training at that point, and then kind of going back to the building blocks. I think about those Elmore James records, and it's just, like you said, when he plays, it seems just inevitable that's what you would play when you pick up a slide. Like it's just the perfect thing. And so learning to play that stuff, I think, gives you a handle of, all right, I can hear it, and then I can play it. And then, because some of the things that are further out, is the more complex stuff. It is daunting, So I think you just have to work your way there. But yeah, for me, Elmore was the beginning. Even Dwayne's stuff was, and those guys were flying by the seat of their pants too. So his intonation at times was, but they were certainly going for it.
Yeah.
But when he was on, it was like no one had ever done anything quite like that. Lowell George and Jesse Ed Davis, they were kind of opening up a whole new world. Seems like it was Elmore, and then those guys for electric slide. J.B. Hutto, but those guys were a little later, I think.
It's interesting listening to the solo in Midnight in Harlem. It's so clean, too, that it made me realize that for all these years, I've been overcompensating with gain and delay and phaser and all this color when I'm playing slide, and which I think now, I realize, kind of makes that all harder and kind of worse. What do you have on your what's your live setup? What's on your pedal board? What amp are you playing through? All that kind of stuff.
It's generally as direct as I can get it.
Really?
Yeah, I'll put a compressor or some version of a tube screamer or some knockoff Klon or something in front of it occasionally, but that's about it. I don't mess with too much.
Do you have the clon set like with the gain kind of rolled off just to give it that boost?
It's just a bit of a boost to get over a 12-piece band at times, but that's it. Sometimes in the studio, mess around with it a bit, but I mean, I think for slide, I think going back to the basics. I mean, if you can find an old National or a Dobro and learn stuff on that, it's as clean as it can get. But there's just an innate dirt in the instrument, anyways. So I think that gives you what you need. Like if we set up a rehearsal room every night. I have a little vintage Vibra champ, old Fender that. I mean, it's kind of the sound, you know. It's kind of all you need.
I mean, there's like moments in your playing that not only sound like somebody's singing. It's got there's like a grit to it that's not gain grit, and it's almost like there's a moment in the solo in Midnight in Harlem that we're about to get into here that sounds like a baby crying. You know, and I'm like, how the hell did you do that?
That's probably just me. Probably me moaning.
Do you remember what guitar, amp, and any pedals, if there were any, that you used on this recording?
It was probably this guitar, and it was probably a deluxe reverb. We have a few good mid-60s deluxes in the studio. Susan has one that's great, and she doesn't often let me use it, but I think I was using it for that. So when she's not looking, I plug that one in.
Oh, that's funny. I never thought of that. My wife, I'm not in a band with my wife, and she doesn't play an instrument, but that would be a funny thing to be protective of each other's gear.
It's only that one amp. It's just this one specific amp she's really protective of. I remember early years when we were on the road and dating, we were playing this club in Cincinnati, and there's a great old vintage store there. It's like 3 floors of just amps and guitars. And I remember calling her. I was like, I found these, like this old deluxe and this old Pro Reverb. I'm not sure what to do. She's like, you should probably get them both. I was like, oh, this is not what I was expecting. I was like, this is a problem now.
You don't have to hide your gear purchases from your wife? That's crazy.
Yeah,
I can't even imagine that.
Yeah, kind of funny.
I thought we could just kind of break down, well, first off, I'm watching some live footage of you playing Midnight in Harlem. I watched a few different versions of it, and you're playing different stuff every night. I'm just guessing you're one of those cats that's like playing, that's not sticking to what was on the record. So I don't even know if you remember exactly what you played on the record.
Probably not.
But I thought we could maybe just break down the first couple bits of it, because there's some signature stuff in there that you do that I would just love to see, kind of really like, you know, get into the nitty gritty on it.
If I can remember it, I'll try. If not, you can edit it out. Yeah, edit it out if it's trash.
Oh yeah, we'll make us both look like look like champs in the edit.
That's awesome.
How do you fret the chords for the song?
It's pretty open. I mean, the main phrase is just. That's the basis of it.
And when you're not playing slide, like where I noticed there'll be moments where your slide's off your finger. Where are you put? Are you just putting it in your pocket? Where are you putting that?
Yeah, just jeans. Corner your jeans. You have to wear the same few pairs because you get comfortable. Like you got a spot.
Right. You don't have like custom Wranglers made with a slide holder?
No, I should. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
No, and there's some nights where you feel like you're really on, where you can be quick. There's other nights where it's tough. You fumble. You're like, I probably should have slept a few more hours last night. That's when I feel it.
Well, I love, like so much of your playing, there's just beautiful space between the notes in this, and it just starts off really with some incredible subtleties. I think in this one, on the record, you start like, like on a major third, and then there's that. So for me, that lines up easier, just kind of doing that mostly on one string down here, but where are you doing it?
maybe open.
Oh, okay.
Does that sound right? Or
Yeah.
that's probably where it is. That
Okay.
sounds more like it.
So
Yeah.
let's break that down slow a little bit. What are the subtle nuances in there for like the notes you pass over quick versus the ones that you do like a fast,
So I think that's getting into the sarod stuff, like the just it's
Yes.
like one of the things I love about playing that tune is a lot of times we'll do like a long intro. We'll do like in Indian classical it's the alap, where you're setting up the rag, and there's all these places you go, and you kind of only introduce certain notes at certain times. Some notes you can't play it until this other pattern has been played, and so that's kind of an approach sometimes you have in the back of your head is you're kind of just saving certain notes. You don't give them away too soon, but it's just that. It's just, I guess it's that general space. That's where I'm thinking in that tune. You're going between just really melodic and just kind of thinking of those Indian classical inflections, like just kind of pulling off, and yeah.
Yeah, that lick in particular is like I feel like in a lot of blues-based slide playing, you don't hear a lot of the fourth note in there, and you throw it in some really nice subtle ways, even like that sort of like that, those kind of things.
Yeah, and a lot of that is gospel stuff too, right? Like I hear a lot of. I remember when I met Sue, Mahalia Jackson was in heavy rotation in both of our CD cases, and some of the stuff she would sing, and some of that Aretha Amazing Grace stuff, they go places where maybe some of the blues changes don't go, which is fun, but yeah.
Yeah, so beautiful. There's a lick a little bit ways into it where you do something like something like that. But when that's kind of like how I figured it out. But it feels like you probably have a more economical way of doing that. I'm kind of fretting it all over the place. So let's see how you actually do it.
Will you play it again? Because I kind of remember it now.
Yeah, it was something like that. I'm just going to kind of try to do it slow.
Yeah, so that's one where I think open E comes in handy, because I'm probably playing it. Something like that. So it's just.
So that's kind of like what we were talking about earlier, where a lot of that's on one string.
Yeah, that's just two strings, really.
Okay.
So yeah, just kind of in the open E box in the middle, on the B string and the G sharp for me.
Then there's a lick that comes kind of after that does a big slide up that I'm wondering how you do, and I'm gonna forget the exact. Here, let me just reference it because it's really cool. There it is. We're doing this remote for people watching, so it's hard to exactly see where your hands are. But
same okay. Two strings, the B and the. And that other one that you played before, I think, is just open string stuff.
Oh, you throwing some open string in there,
Yeah,
too.
I think that's what I heard in there.
Cool. Yeah.
I haven't heard that in a minute. That's funny.
Yeah, I'm guessing you're not listening back to the version you recorded.
Sounds so young and hopeful then.
Okay, well, from right about there, it begins to build in intensity, and we don't have time to break down all of it because it goes on for a while, but what would, like, could you demonstrate a little bit like how you would approach that on any given night to build that intensity and get it higher up the neck and start to scream a little more?
Yeah, I mean, you know, a lot of that is dictated by what's happening behind you, and you're trying to have the band build and not give it away too soon. But yeah, I mean, it's you're kind of exploring those melodies down low, sometimes really low. When it sounds good and you can hear your amp well, it's fun to get down in like the. So you know, you just kind of
and that for the kids at home is why Derek Trucks is considered the greatest slide player of all time, right there. Thank you.
You know, you're just trying to build the melodies and then the intensity and not give it away too soon. Sometimes sometimes you can overshoot the mark. Sometimes you can undershoot the mark. But like every once in a while, like I'm sure it's the same for you. There's 1 in 10 shows where it just everything lines up and you get done and you kind of just deep breath goes out. You just big exhale and you know it feels good. And then other times it's over and you're like,
yeah. It's funny how sometimes it'll be that one moment in a set that just sticks with you. You're like,
good or bad. But you know, that's what keeps us coming back. Back to Colonel Bruce Hampton, he would always say, if you have 3 terrible shows in a row, you should retire. He'd say, if you have 3 great shows in a row, you should retire.
Wow.
I was like, I've never had. He's right. Like we've had like magic night, next night really good, and then there's always a letdown. But I don't think I've ever had 3 truly great shows in a row.
Occupational hazard.
That's funny. That's true. It keeps us coming back.
Do you have time to take some questions from the people?
Let's do it.
Fan questions. Sarah Kwan Hoth wants to know what led you to play without a pick mostly, and was it a comfort thing or a proficiency thing?
So when I was first sitting in Jacksonville in like blues clubs, and I would always play with a pick until I would play slide, and then I would kind of put a pick between these 2 fingers, and I just like the sound better with fingers, and then I would drop it so often. It was just like, what am I doing? I just kind of started, just let it go. It just seemed like it wasn't working out for me with a pick. And now when I play with one, I feel like I'm about 8 years old. Like I don't know what I'm doing. If I pick up a guitar in standard and a pick, it's not pretty. it's not good.
Something tells me you can figure it out.
I mean, it's not great.
Yeah. All right, I got one more question for you, and you've been very generous with your time, Derek, and I appreciate you just doing this while you're in the middle of a tour. Anywho,
well, thank you.
But
man.
Mike Taylor asks, he says, too many questions, but any plans for more collaboration or touring with Warren Haynes, and what type of whiskey will be sipped?
I'll be doing the sipping there. Warren doesn't really drink a whole lot. Whatever I can get my hands on. It's hard finding good whiskey these days. You know, I just recorded with Warren. He did a solo record. I don't know if it's out yet, but he came down to our farm in Georgia and we wrote 2-3 songs together. And then he had a song or 2 that he was writing with Greg when he passed away. That one of them was really beautiful. So we recorded maybe 4 or 5 of those for his album. So
Oh, cool.
I'll probably run into him somewhere down the road. It's always good to reconnect. We have a lot of shared history, and I think I met Warren when I first saw him play when I was 9 or 10, when the Allman Brothers got back together in '89. I remember seeing him, and then him and Greg and my uncle and Alan Woody all came out to this bar I was playing in South Florida called Tropics International, and it's the first time I met Greg and all of those guys. They were making that record with Tom Dowd at Criteria Studios.
Oh, wow.
And so I've known Warren since then, and he's always been a great friend and a teacher, and then a contemporary, and then just it's always great to see him, and he's out there plugging away. I think this record he's putting out is going to be really good for him. It's a nice change of pace from his. He's been doing the Government Mule thing for forever, and it's incredible. But this is a nice detour for him. I think it's going to be. Nice. I think it's going to be a good record for him.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear it, man. I hope I run into you down the road here soon too.
I would love to, man. And you severely undersold your slide playing, by the way. There's not many people with good intonation, man. I didn't hear a thing.
Well, that is high praise coming from you, sir. So believe you me, after this interview, I'm going to go do nothing but woodshed at home on my couch with this thing and my slide. So thank you. All right, that was Derek Trucks right here on Shred With Shifty. We'll see you next time with Zach Wild.
1, 2, 3.
Shred With Shifty is created and hosted by me, Chris Shiflett, and produced in partnership with Double Elvis, Volume.com, and Premier Guitar. Shred With Shifty is produced by my long-suffering friend, Jason Shadrick. Our executive producers are Brady Sadler and Jake Brennan for Double Elvis. Our video editor is Addison Savan. Graphic design by Megan Prawley. Engineering support by Matt Tahaney and Matt Bowden. Special thanks to Chris Peterson, Jamie Demas, Greg Necrone, Ben Holst, John Romero, and the entire Volume.com crew.